So speaking of doing time, did you know when the time was up? Did you know when you said that's it? In my case, I remembered very distinctly going home at 2 a.m. after a whole week of 2 a.m.s, crying in the cab and saying, you know what, this just isn't a life. This isn't for me. I don't want to work hard to work harder, to work hardest, and then become a partner at a firm and still work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So for me, once I realized that success just meant more of the same, I wanted to find something more scalable. Do you remember when you made that decision?
Yeah, I think mine was pretty early on. It was, I would say, within the first 6 months of law school, I had spent quite a bit of time um, getting a pretty heavy hammer over my head about what exactly it was that a lawyer did all day long. And I just thought, this is not, this was like the bait and switch. This wasn't what I signed up for. And I tried to use it to my advantage. I would say within the first 6 months, I started building my company while I was at school and realized that's what got me jazzed every day. That's what got me up. And it was much harder work than law school. I mean, it was grueling trying to get this, building this practice, especially as someone who had never done it before.
So how long did you work as an agent, as a player agent? Was that only in school, or did that bridge the gap between law firm and your first entrepreneurial venture?
Yeah, so I started Prodigy when I was in first year law, did it on my own as a favor to a couple guys I knew that played for the Canadian national team who just needed representation and figured I was the cheapest and closest proximity they could get. And then that grew to a partnership of about 6 or 7 agents that worked together around the world. And I think the final client list when I sold the practice to my partner was probably about 70 players on the roster, 65, 70 players. And that ended, I sold it. It's funny, I sold it after I graduated law school and after I articled, because I realized that it suffered from the same problem law did, which was at the end of the day, it was only about hours billed, effectively.
You
It
can't
was
scale it. It's only about number of people working times hours worked times rate per hour. You can only make that scale so much.
Yeah, and it was a good lifestyle business in the sense that if you did well at it, you look at companies like IMG and the sports division of CAA, but at the end of the day, they're not changing the planet. They're not doing anything all that interesting. So for me, being a player agent was actually a diversion from where I started my real career, which was in the music business and digital. So I started as an 18-year-old working as a product manager at MCA Records, which is now Universal. And because I was the only guy under the age of 30 in the room, prior to the browsable internet, there was all kinds of funky music activity with people going, in the heavy metal community and stuff in telnets and BBSs. And I was the only guy who knew how to do it. So I went and did it. So I actually started doing digital in and around 1990. And so the sports thing was a bit of a diversion.